A young billionaire sees triplets crying in front of a church. We were abandoned. Nobody wants us, they say. He takes them home. But when he returns from work, what they did to his wife in a wheelchair is chilling. The sound of rain hitting the windshield was almost hypnotic. Claire hummed softly as she drove down the road she knew by heart, one hand on the wheel and the other gently caressing her 6-month pregnant belly. The baby stirred, as if dancing along with the music playing on the radio. "Dad is going to flip when he finds out you already recognize this song," she whispered, smiling. Ian always said the baby would be born loving jazz, since Claire never stopped playing Miles Davis during her pregnancy. The checkup with the doctor had been perfect, everything normal, everything healthy. In 3 months, she and Ian would finally meet the face they had imagined so much. Boy or girl, it didn't matter. They just wanted the baby to arrive soon. Claire glanced in the rearview mirror and saw the truck approaching way too fast. Much too fast for that wet curve. She slammed on the brakes instinctively, but it was already too late. The impact was violent. The world turned upside down in seconds, metal twisting, glass shattering. The scream that escaped her throat lost in the deafening noise of the crash. And then, absolute silence. When Claire woke up in the hospital 3 days later, the first thing she tried to do was move her legs. Nothing. She tried again, gathering all her strength. Nothing. "Claire." Ian's voice was hoarse, exhausted. He was holding her hand and she could see he had cried a lot. "My legs," she whispered. "I can't." Ian closed his eyes for a moment before answering. "There was a spinal injury. The doctors, they did everything they could." Claire looked at him, trying to process the words. Spinal injury. She knew what that meant, but her mind refused to accept it. "And the baby?" she asked, bringing her hand to her belly. Ian's silence was his answer. "Ian, where is our baby?" He squeezed her hand tighter, tears streaming down his face. They performed an emergency C-section, but... His voice broke. "He didn't make it, Claire. Our boy didn't make it." The world collapsed at that moment. Not only had her legs stopped working, her heart had too. Claire felt as if a part of her had been ripped away, leaving an emptiness that hurt more than any physical wound. In the days that followed at the hospital, as the doctors explained her new reality, Claire closed herself off. Physical therapists tried to help her with wheelchair exercises, but she barely cooperated. Psychologists came to talk to her, but she only answered with one-word replies or simply turned her face away. "Mr. and Mrs. Mercer," the head doctor said one morning, "Claire needs to start adapting. Rehabilitation is essential for her quality of life." Ian agreed to everything, asked all the questions, took notes on every recommendation, but Claire only wanted to leave. She wanted to hide somewhere no one could ask how she was, where no one tried to cheer her up or tell her everything would be okay. When she finally returned home 2 weeks later, Claire refused any help getting out of the car. Ian brought the wheelchair, but she barely looked at it. "I can help you," he said softly. "I don't need help," Claire replied, even though her hands trembled as she tried to transfer into the chair. Inside the house, everything felt different. The same furniture, the same photos on the walls, but now she saw everything from a different height. Everything seemed altered, strange, as if she were a visitor in her own home. Ian had installed a ramp at the entrance and modified the downstairs bathroom. He showed her all the adaptations with cautious pride, hoping for approval that never came. "I thought you could use this room," he said, opening the door to the former office. "It's on the ground floor, more practical." Claire looked at the room for a moment and shook her head. "I want to go to my bedroom." "But Claire, the stair, I want to go to my bedroom." Ian didn't argue. He helped her up, step by step, carrying the chair separately. When they reached the master bedroom, Claire transferred straight onto the bed and covered herself with the blue blanket she had knitted for the baby. "You need to eat something," Ian said. I want to be alone." "Claire, please, Ian, I just want to be alone." He left, closing the door softly behind him. In the days that followed, Claire refused to leave the bedroom. Ian would bring meals upstairs, which she barely touched. He tried to talk to her, but she only responded when necessary. The wheelchair sat against the wall, ignored. "The physical therapist can come here," Ian suggested one morning. "It would be more comfortable for you." "I don't want a physical therapist." "But you need to move. You need to use the chair, do exercises." "I don't need to do anything," Ian sighed, sitting on the edge of the bed. "Claire, you can't stay here forever." "Why not?" she asked, still turned away from him. "What's down there that I need to see? What's out there that I need to do? You have a life. I have no life, Ian. I can't walk. My baby is dead. What kind of life is that?" His words cut through the air like blades. Ian remained silent for a long moment. "Your son, our son, he wouldn't want you to give up like this." Claire turned to face him, her eyes red from so much crying. "Don't you dare use him against me. You don't know what he would have wanted. He wasn't born because of me." "It wasn't your fault. I was driving. I couldn't swerve in time. I killed my own child." Claire turned away again, pulling the blanket over her head. Ian tried to touch her, but she backed away. "Get out of my room, Ian. Please." He obeyed, as he always did lately. Weeks passed and Claire stayed in the bedroom. Friends called, but she refused to talk. Her sister came to visit, but Claire pretended to be asleep. Ian hired professionals to help, but she sent them away. "I don't want to see anyone," she told Ian. "I don't want to talk to anyone. I just want to stay here." "But Claire, if you love me, leave me alone." And Ian left her, because he didn't know what else to do. The house that was once full of life now lived in silence. Ian worked even more, arriving late and leaving early. When he was home, he sat for hours in the living room, listening to the sounds from upstairs, or rather, their absence. Claire turned the bedroom into her entire world. There she cried, slept, existed only. The wheelchair remained against the wall, a symbol of a reality she refused to accept, because to accept would mean admitting that her life had changed forever, and she wasn't ready for that. Maybe she never would be. 3 months after the accident, nothing had changed. Claire remained locked in the bedroom. Ian continued bringing food she barely touched, and the house stayed immersed in the deepest silence it had ever known, a silence that seemed to never end. A year had passed since the crash, and Ian's routine had become mechanical. Wake up, bring breakfast upstairs which Claire wouldn't touch, work at the restaurant trying not to think about the woman wasting away in the bedroom, come home with dinner that would also be ignored. It was a sad dance they had perfected over the months. Rain began to fall as Ian left the last restaurant in his chain, located in downtown. It was almost 8 o'clock on a cold October Tuesday. He sprinted to the car, yet he still arrived drenched. He started the engine and sat there for a moment, watching the raindrops slide down the windshield. Another day had ended. Another day that Claire had spent locked in the bedroom, refusing to live. Ian drove through familiar streets, passing the town square, the elementary school, the small grocery store where he and Claire used to shop together. Everything looked the same, yet completely different, as if he were seeing it all through a gray filter he could never remove from his eyes. The restaurant chain was doing well, better than ever, actually. Ian had thrown himself into work like a shipwreck survivor clings to debris. He expanded to 3 locations in the last year, each with its own specialty. Professional success, however, felt empty. Every compliment, every positive review, every month of growing profits only emphasized the void he felt at home. When he drove past St. Helena's Church, something made him hit the brakes. 3 small figures sat on the marble steps of the main entrance. Even with the heavy rain, they remained there, motionless like tiny statues. Ian parked on the street, turning on his headlights to see better. They were 3 little girls, small, soaked through, clinging to each other. Ian looked around. The street was empty. The church was obviously closed at that hour. There was no one nearby, no responsible adult in sight. He hesitated for a moment. Maybe they were just kids playing. Maybe someone would come for them soon. But the rain was picking up, and they looked so small, so vulnerable alone out there. He turned off the engine and got out of the car. As he approached, Ian noticed something surprising. The 3 girls were identical, triplets, appearing to be about 5 years old. Their wet brown hair clung to their faces, their clothes soaked and faded from being washed and washed again, their big, frightened eyes watching him with a mix of caution and desperate hope. "Hello?" Ian said softly. crouching down to their level. "Are you okay?" The middle girl, who seemed the bravest of the three, stared at him directly. Even drenched and shivering, there was something determined in her posture, as if she had taken on the role of protecting her sisters. "We're waiting," she said in a small but firm voice. "Waiting for what?" Ian asked, noticing how the other two huddled closer to their sister. "Waiting for someone to pick us up." Ian looked around again. The rain was getting harder, forming small puddles on the church steps. The girls were visibly shaking from the cold, but they made no move to leave. "How long have you been here?" The three looked at each other, seeming to communicate silently through the kind of glance only very close siblings can share. "Since this morning," the same girl answered, trying to keep her voice firm. "Since this morning?" Ian was alarmed. They had spent the entire day there, exposed to the elements. "And where are your parents?" Again that glancing among them. This time the girl on the left spoke, her voice almost a whisper filled with sadness. "Our mother died. We stayed with our stepfather, but he said we weren't his responsibility. He brought us here and left," added the middle girl, trying to sound brave but her voice shaking. "He said someone would take care of us, but we were left. Nobody wants us." The words hit Ian like a punch to the stomach. He looked at those three soaked little faces, at those eyes that seemed to have seen too much for children so young, and he felt something stir in his chest, a pain different from the one he had carried for a year, a pain that pushed him to act instead of just endure. "What are your names?" he asked, his voice still gentle. "I'm Amelie," said the middle girl, lifting her chin slightly. "She is Nora," she pointed to the one on the left, "and this is Sky." She indicated the girl on the right, who seemed the shyest of the three. "Amelie and Nora and Sky," Ian repeated, committing the names to memory. "And do you really not have anyone else? No relatives who could take care of you?" Amelie nodded slowly. "Aunt Martha said she would come, but—" She trailed off, biting her lower lip. "She said that yesterday too. And the day before. And last week. The stepfather said she would pick us up," Nora added in an even softer voice. "But she never came." Ian felt anger rise in his chest. What kind of person abandons 3 children in front of a church? What kind of adult leaves 5-year-old triplets to fend for themselves, promising things they never intended to keep? "Are you hungry?" he asked, trying to keep his voice calm. The 3 nodded timidly. "And cold?" More nods, and Ian could see their little bodies shivering under their wet clothes. "When was the last time you ate anything?" "Yesterday morning." Sky spoke for the first time, her voice barely a thread. "A lady brought some cookies." Ian looked up at the dark sky, at the rain that showed no sign of stopping, at those 3 little abandoned creatures dripping water. There wasn't much to think about. There was no choice to make. "Come with me," he said, extending his hand. "Let's get out of this rain." Amelie hesitated, her protective instinct on high alert. "You'll take us to the police." Ian recognized the fear in her question. They had probably had bad experiences with authorities already, or at least been threatened by them. "Not tonight," Ian answered honestly. "Tonight I'll take you somewhere warm and dry. I'll give you food, and tomorrow we'll figure out what to do. Do you trust me?" The girls looked at each other again, seeming to make a collective decision. Amelie was the first to stand, her legs clearly numb from staying in the same position for so long. She helped her sisters stand, and the 3 of them walked toward Ian's car, small and fragile like drenched sparrows. Ian opened the back door and helped each of them inside, securing their seatbelts. He turned the heater up to the highest setting and glanced in the rearview mirror. The 3 sat side by side, still huddled together, watching him with a mix of caution and hope that broke his heart. "Is everything okay back there?" he asked. "Yes, sir," they answered in unison, their small voices echoing in the warm car. "You can call me Ian." On the way home, Ian tried to process what he had just done. 3 children. 3 orphaned, abandoned children now in his car, heading to his home. To the home where Claire had hidden herself for a year, refusing to live. What would she say when she saw them? How would she react? Ian knew that Claire could barely cope with her own pain, let alone with 3 children needing care and attention. But when he looked again in the rearview mirror and saw those 3 tired faces leaning on each other, he knew he had done the only thing he could. "Ian!" Sky's voice pulled him from his thoughts. "Yes, sweetheart. Will we sleep in a real bed tonight?" Ian's heart tightened. How long had it been since they had a proper bed? "Yes, sweetheart. You will sleep in a real bed." "And will we have a hot bath?" Nora asked, as if she couldn't believe the possibility. "Yes. Hot bath, dry clothes, and as much dinner as you can eat." "And dinner," Amelie added, her eyes lighting up for the first time. "Dinner, too. What do you like to eat?" "Anything," Sky replied quickly. "We're not picky." Ian had to swallow down the emotion that welled up in his throat. Children who ate anything because they had no choice, who were grateful for a hot bath and a bed because they knew what it was to have none of those basic things. When they arrived home, Ian parked in the garage and shut off the engine. The girls looked around, taking in the large house with its well-kept gardens, the lit windows on the ground floor, the overall sense of home radiating from the place. "Is this where you live?" Amelie asked, impressed. "It is. Me and my wife." "Where is she?" Ian hesitated for a moment. "She is upstairs. She hasn't been feeling well lately." Amelie nodded, as if she perfectly understood that adults sometimes didn't feel well. She probably had seen it happen before. Ian led them through the side door, straight to the kitchen. He turned on all the lights and watched the girls look around in fascination. It was obvious they weren't used to big houses, equipped kitchens, the feeling of safety and comfort that environment provided. "First, let's get those wet clothes off," Ian said. "I'll find something dry for you to wear." He went upstairs to the guest room and found some of his t-shirts and thick socks that could temporarily fit them. When he came back down, the girls were still standing in the same spot, as if afraid to move or touch anything. "You can sit here," Ian said, pointing to the chairs at the kitchen table. "You can walk around the house, touch things. This is your home now. At least for today." They sat cautiously, still looking around with curiosity and a bit of fear, as if they expected someone to yell at them at any moment. Ian helped each of them change in the downstairs bathroom, drying their hair with a soft towel and then seating them at the kitchen table as he made ham and cheese sandwiches and hot chocolate. It felt strange to have voices in the house again, voices beyond his own, echoing through walls that had known only silence for so long. "Do you go to school?" he asked while cutting sandwiches. "We knew how to read a little," said Nora. "But it's been a long time since we went to school." "How long?" The girls looked at each other again, clearly trying to calculate. "A few months," Amelie replied vaguely, "since our mother got sick." "And did you like school?" "We did," Sky said timidly. "There were other kids, and books, and the teacher was nice." Ian served the sandwiches and hot chocolate, watching how they ate with controlled eagerness. It was obvious they were very hungry, but they also tried to eat politely, as if they didn't want to seem uncouth. "Slow down," he said softly. "There's plenty of food. No need to rush. No one is going to take it away from you." It was then they heard a sound coming from upstairs. Footsteps, or more precisely, the unmistakable sound of a wheelchair moving. The 3 girls stopped eating immediately and looked up at the ceiling, then at Ian with worried expressions. "That's my wife," he explained. "She must have heard you talking." A few minutes later, they heard Claire's voice from the top of the stairs, a voice Ian hadn't heard in weeks. "Ian. Ian, can you come here?" The girls froze, sensing something important was happening. "Stay here," Ian said softly. "Eat as much as you want. I'll be right back." He climbed the stairs slowly, preparing for the conversation he knew would be difficult. Claire stood at the top of the stairs in her wheelchair, which she rarely used. Her hair was messy. She'd been wearing the same pajamas for days, but there was something different in her eyes, a spark of curiosity, of life, that he hadn't seen for months. "There are children in our house," she said. It wasn't a question. "There are... how many?" "3. Claire stared at him for a long moment, her face a mask of exhaustion and confusion. "Look at me," she said. her voice tired but firm. "Do you think I can take care of children?" Ian looked at the woman he loved, the person who had hidden from the world for a year, who could barely take care of herself. She wasn't blaming him, he could see that clearly. It was just a painful acknowledgement of her own condition, an honest question about her limitations. "They were alone," he replied simply. "I couldn't leave them." Claire remained silent for a few seconds, the sound of the girls' voices echoing downstairs. "3 children? Ian, 3? I know. And what are we going to do with them tomorrow?" "I don't know yet, but today they are safe. Today they have food and a warm place to sleep." Claire kept looking at him, as if trying to understand something beyond her current comprehension. Then, without saying another word, she turned her chair and went back into the bedroom. The door clicked softly shut, but this time Ian didn't feel rejection in the gesture. There was something different, something he couldn't identify. Ian stood there for a moment, listening to the sound of the girls' voices downstairs, mixed with the heavy silence that once again took over the hallway. But it was a different silence now, a silence that seemed to be cracking. He went down and found the 3 girls exactly where he had left them, but now they were watching him with worried expressions. "Does she not like us?" Skye asked in a low voice. Ian approached and crouched beside her chair. "It's not that, sweetheart. She's going through a very hard time. But it has nothing to do with you. We can leave if she doesn't want us," Amelie offered, always the protector. "We understand. We've had to leave other places before." "No," Ian said firmly. "You are not going anywhere today. Tomorrow we will talk about what to do, but today you stay here. You stay. You are safe here." And for the first time since they arrived, the 3 girls smiled. Upstairs, in the dark bedroom, Claire listened to the sound of children's voices echoing through the house, voices that brought life to a place that had become a mausoleum. She leaned her head against the door and closed her eyes, feeling something inside her chest move that she couldn't identify. The house was no longer silent. The next morning, Ian woke up early and went down to the kitchen. The 3 girls were sitting at the table, still wearing their borrowed t-shirts, watching the garden outside the window, shining with morning dew. They had slept in the guest room, all 3 together in the double bed, clinging to each other as they always did. "Good morning, girls," Ian said softly. "Good morning," they replied in unison, turning to him with shy smiles. Ian made pancakes and orange juice, watching how they ate more slowly this time, savoring each bite as if it were a treasure. The sun streamed through the kitchen windows, creating a cozy atmosphere the house hadn't known in a long time. "Did you sleep well?" he asked, sitting down with them. "It was the best night of our lives," Skye said sincerely, making Ian's heart tighten. After breakfast, they settled in the living room. Ian had called the office, cancelling his morning meetings. There were more important things to deal with now. The girls sat on the big sofa, still close to each other, while Ian took a chair facing them. "I need to understand your situation better," he said carefully, "to know how I can help. Can you tell me about your life before you got to the church?" The 3 looked at each other with that silent look Ian was learning to recognize. Amelie, as always, took on the role of spokesperson. "Our mother was very kind," she began, her voice low but firm. "She took care of us on her own. She always said we were her 3 stars." "How did she die?" Ian asked gently. "She got sick," Nora replied, her hands nervously playing with the hem of her shirt. "At first it was just a cough, then she got very weak. It took us a long time to get a doctor." "She stayed in the hospital for weeks," Skye added, her voice almost a whisper. "We stayed with different neighbors. No one could take care of all 3 of us at once." Amelie took a deep breath before continuing. "When she died, our stepfather came. He married our mother just a few months before she got sick. We barely knew him." "And what was it like living with him?" Ian asked, though he already imagined the answer. "He didn't like us," Nora said simply. "He always said we were too many, that we were too much work, that we cost too much money. He yelled at us for anything," Skye added. "If we made noise, if we asked for food, if we cried because we missed our mother." Ian felt anger swell in his chest, but he kept his voice calm. "And when did he decide to abandon you?" "One morning he said we had to leave," Amelie said, her hands trembling. He said we weren't really his daughters, that it wasn't his responsibility to take care of us, that he had other plans for his life. He took us to the church and said someone would come to get us, Nora continued. That we just had to wait. But nobody came, Sky murmured. Ian closed his eyes for a moment, fighting to contain his emotion. And after he left, how did you survive? The girls were quiet for a few seconds. It was Amelie who always told the toughest parts, protecting her sisters even when they all had lived the same experience. On the first day, we thought he would come back, she said. We stayed seated on the steps waiting. Some people asked if we were lost, but we said someone was coming to get us. On the second day, we started to feel very hungry, Nora continued. A lady leaving church brought us some cookies. Another brought water. But at night it got very cold, Sky said, shivering at the memory. We huddled together to stay warm, and there were strange noises. We were scared. Ian leaned forward, his hands clasped. Where did you sleep? Sometimes under the church steps, Amelie answered. When it rained a lot, we tried to find a shop with an awning. One time we slept in a park under a big tree. And food? How did you get food? When people left church on Sundays, some gave us things, Nora explained. Sandwiches, fruit. But during the week it was harder. We rummaged through restaurant dumpsters, Sky said softly, as if ashamed, always looking for food that was still good. Amelie checked everything first. Ian's heart broke imagining those little ones searching the trash for food, sleeping in the open, cold and scared. And nobody called the police. Nobody asked where your parents were. Some people asked, Amelie said, but we always said Aunt Martha was coming. We were afraid we'd be separated if we told the truth. Separated. One time, some older boys in the square said that when police pick up kids alone, they go to different places, Nora explained. That siblings don't stay together. We thought if we disappeared, nobody would notice, Sky said, repeating words she clearly heard from someone older. That it was better to stay together and take care of each other. Ian had to swallow the lump forming in his throat. And you never thought about seeking help, going to a station, or... We were afraid, Amelie admitted. Our stepfather always said if we bothered anyone, worse things could happen. That there were horrible places for kids without families. He said we had to stay invisible, Nora added, that nobody liked troublesome kids. Troublesome? Ian repeated, incredulous. That's what he called us, Sky explained. He always said we were 3 problems he didn't ask for. Ian stood and walked to the window, trying to process everything he had heard. 3 5-year-old girls and orphans, abandoned by a man who should have protected them, living on the streets for weeks, afraid to ask for help, because they believed they would be separated. You know you're not troublesome, right? He said, sitting back down. You are children. Children deserve care, affection, protection. You didn't ask to be born. You didn't ask to lose your mother. None of this is your fault. The 3 looked at him as if he was speaking a foreign language. It was obvious they had never heard words like that. You are brave, Ian continued. Very brave. You took care of each other, protected each other, survived things even adults couldn't. That's not being troublesome. That's being strong. Amelie was the first to start crying. Silent tears she tried to hide, but soon her sisters joined in. It was as if they finally had permission to feel all the pain they had held in for weeks. Ian approached and, hesitant, opened his arms. The 3 girls threw themselves into his embrace, crying into his chest all the sadness, all the fear, all the longing for the mother they had lost, and the safety they would never feel again. You are safe now, he murmured, stroking their hair. You are safe. And for the first time in weeks, the girls believed those words. Upstairs, Claire leaned her head against the bedroom door and closed her eyes. She had heard everything, every word, every sob, every fragment of pain those children carried. And something inside her, something that had been asleep for a year, began to stir. In the days following the girls' arrival, the Mercer's house began to change in subtle but profound ways. The 3 girls brought life to corners that had been silent for so long. They explored every room with careful curiosity, always asking permission before touching anything, always apologizing for any noise they made. On the 3rd morning after they arrived, The three were sitting on the Persian rug in the living room, whispering among themselves as if planning something important. They had eaten breakfast with meticulous care, washed their own cups and plates, and now they were taking in their surroundings with eyes that glowed with possibilities. "Can we play here?" Sky asked softly to her sisters, looking around the spacious room. "Do you think we can?" Nora responded, always the most cautious of the three. "Let's ask," Amelie decided, taking on the leadership role as always. Ian said this house is ours too, but when they went to look for Ian, they found he had gone out early to handle work matters. They stayed in the living room, looking at each other, not knowing exactly what to do. "What if we play very quietly?" Sky suggested, "without making noise." "We always know how to play without disturbing anyone," Nora agreed. And so it began. After some hesitation, the girls started creating elaborate games, using cushions as mountains and the rug as an ocean. Amelie was always the adventurous leader, Nora the wise one who knew everything about the magical creatures they encountered, and Sky the brave one who saved everyone from dangers. "Watch out," Amelie whispered dramatically. "The sea is very stormy today." "Don't worry," Nora replied, pretending to consult an imaginary book. "I know exactly how to navigate these waters. My grandmother taught me before she passed." They always included subtle references to the life they had lost, as if they needed to keep their memories alive through their play. "Look," Sky pointed to a cushion. "An island! We can rest there." And then the three carefully jumped from one spot on the rug to another, as if they were really sailing through dangerous waters. Upstairs, something had changed too. Claire, who for months had kept the bedroom door tightly closed, now left it slightly ajar. It was a small crack, almost imperceptible, but it was there. And she positioned the wheelchair so that she could better hear the sounds coming from below. At first, the noise of the children bothered her. After so much silence, any sound seemed invasive, disturbing. But gradually, she began to focus not on the noise, but on what was being said. The small voices telling stories, creating worlds, giggling quietly. "Now we are three mermaids who were expelled from the sea," she heard Sky say one morning. "We have to find a new home." "Why were you expelled?" Nora asked. "Because we were different," Amelie replied. "We had special powers that scared others." "What kind of powers?" "The power to heal broken hearts," Sky said softly. Claire closed her eyes, feeling something move in her chest. How did these children manage to create stories that seemed to speak directly to her? The girls' games began to follow a pattern. They discovered the room's special acoustics, that their voices echoed in a way that made everything seem more magical. And they started using it to their advantage. "Welcome to the Enchanted Castle," Amelie announced at the start of each session, her clear voice projecting, "where all lost children can find a family." "But first we need to build our fortress," Nora added, always practical. And then the construction began. They used the sheets Ian had given them to make elaborate forts, stretching them between the sofa and armchairs, creating tunnels and hideouts. The cushions became castle towers, the living room plants transformed into magical forests, and the Persian rug was sometimes a stormy ocean, other times a flower field where lost princesses found their way home. "Today we will tell the story of three sisters who never separated," Sky narrated one afternoon, her voice full of childlike drama. "Even when everyone tried to break them apart," Nora continued. "Because they had a magical power that only worked when they were together," Amelie finished. Claire listened to every word from above, positioning her chair closer to the door each time. There was something about these stories that touched her in a way she couldn't explain. Maybe it was the innocence of the voices, or how they managed to turn pain into magic through imagination. "And what was their power?" Nora asked, taking on the role of audience. "The power to make very sad people smile again," Sky answered. "But how?" "They showed that even when everything seems lost, there's always someone who cares," Amelie explained. Claire felt tears streaming down her face. When was the last time she had cried for something other than pain? The girls seemed to intuitively sense there was someone listening. Their play took on an even more elaborate tone, as if they were performing for an invisible audience. They spoke louder, created more detailed stories, hummed songs their mother had taught them. "Let's sing the song of courage," Amelie suggested, when one of their characters was afraid. And then the three voices joined in a simple yet touching melody. "When the night grows dark and you don't know where to go, remember you're not alone. There's always someone here." Claire found herself looking forward to these singing moments. There was something deeply healing about hearing those little voices singing about hope and companionship. The stories the girls created always had similar themes: family, protection, finding a home. But they never spoke directly about their own experiences. Instead, they channeled their lives through princesses, mermaids, brave adventurers who fought dragons and discovered treasures. "Look," Sky pointed to a cushion, "an island. We can rest there." The girls then carefully jumped from one spot on the rug to another, as if really navigating dangerous waters. Upstairs, something had changed too. Claire, who for months had kept the bedroom door tightly closed, now left it slightly ajar. It was a small crack, almost imperceptible, but it was there. And she positioned the wheelchair so that she could better hear the sounds coming from below. At first, the noise of the children bothered her. After so much silence, any sound seemed invasive, disturbing. But gradually, she began to focus not on the noise, but on what was being said. The small voices telling stories, creating worlds, giggling quietly. "Now we are 3 mermaids who were expelled from the sea," she heard Sky say one morning. "We have to find a new home." "Why were you expelled?" Nora asked. "Because we were different," Amelie replied. "We had special powers that scared others." "What kind of powers?" "The power to heal broken hearts," Sky said softly. Claire closed her eyes, feeling something move in her chest. How did these children manage to create stories that seemed to speak directly to her? The girls' games began to follow a pattern. They discovered the room's special acoustics, that their voices echoed in a way that made everything seem more magical, and they started using it to their advantage. "Welcome to the Enchanted Castle," Amelie announced at the start of each session, her clear voice projecting, "where all lost children can find a family." "But first we need to build our fortress," Nora added, always practical. And then the construction began. They used the sheets Ian had given them to make elaborate forts, stretching them between the sofa and armchairs, creating tunnels and hideouts. The cushions became castle towers, the living room plants transformed into magical forests, and the Persian rug was sometimes a stormy ocean, other times a flower field where lost princesses found their way home. "Today we will tell the story of 3 sisters who never separated," Sky narrated one afternoon, her voice full of childlike drama. "Even when everyone tried to break them apart," Nora continued. "Because they had a magical power that only worked when they were together," Amelie finished. Claire listened to every word from above, positioning her chair closer to the door each time. There was something about these stories that touched her in a way she couldn't explain. Maybe it was the innocence of the voices, or how they managed to transform pain into magic through imagination. "And what was their power?" Nora asked, taking on the role of audience. "The power to make very sad people smile again," Sky answered. "But how?" "They showed that even when everything seems lost, there's always someone who cares," Amelie explained. Claire felt tears streaming down her face. When was the last time she had cried for something other than pain? The girls seemed to intuitively sense there was someone listening. Their play took on an even more elaborate tone, as if they were performing for an invisible audience. They spoke louder, created more detailed stories, hummed songs their mother had taught them. "Let's sing the song of courage," Amelie suggested, when one of their characters was afraid. And then the 3 voices joined in a simple yet touching melody. "When the night grows dark and you don't know where to go, remember you're not alone. There's always someone here." Claire found herself looking forward to these singing moments. There was something deeply healing about hearing those little voices singing about hope and companionship. The stories the girls created always had similar themes: family, protection, finding a home, but they never spoke directly about their own experiences. Instead, they channeled their lives through princesses, mermaids, brave adventurers who fought dragons and discovered treasures. "Now the Princess Amélie found an abandoned castle," she narrated one afternoon. "It was so quiet inside," Nora added. as if everyone who lived there had forgotten how to be happy. But the princess knew just what to do, Sky continued. What did she do? She started to sing, and to laugh, and to tell stories, until the castle remembered what it was like to have life within its walls. Claire got up from the bed at that moment, moving to the door. She was listening to a childlike version of her own story, told by three girls who barely knew her, but who seemed to intuitively understand what was happening in this house. She placed her hand on the doorknob, hesitating. It had been so long since she'd left the bedroom, so long since she'd interacted with anyone besides Ian. Did she still know how to do that? And did the princesses manage to save the castle? One of the voices asked below. They did, another responded, because sometimes all a sad place needs is happy voices echoing through its halls. Claire opened the door a bit more, then a bit more, until she was finally in the hallway looking at the staircase she hadn't descended in over a year. Downstairs, the girls continued playing, unaware of the historic moment happening upstairs. They had built a particularly elaborate fort that afternoon, using every sheet in the house to create a cozy space where they sat in a circle. In this magical fort, Amelie explained, all wounded people can find healing. And all broken families can become whole again, Nora added. And no one ever has to be alone again, Sky completed. Claire stood there for a few minutes, just breathing, listening to the voices that had brought life back into her home, voices that spoke of healing, family, hope. And then, for the first time in a year, she descended. The wheelchair made a soft noise on the steps. Claire had forgotten how to use it properly. Her muscles protested the movement after so much inactivity, but she continued down, step by step. The sound made the girls stop playing immediately. When Claire appeared at the entrance to the living room, the three stood watching her with curiosity and surprise. It was the first time they saw her outside the bedroom, the first time they truly saw her. There was a moment of silence, as if everyone were processing the magnitude of what was happening. Then Sky, always the most empathetic and least intimidated, took a step forward. "Hello, ma'am," she said in her sweet voice. "Do you want to see our castle?" Claire looked at the elaborate fort they had built, at the three faces watching her without judgment, just genuine and kind interest. There were no questions about where she'd been, why she hadn't come down earlier, about her wheelchair. There was only a simple invitation to participate in something they had created. She nodded. She said nothing. She didn't smile, but she nodded. And for the first time in over a year, Claire Mercer was present, truly present. Amelie approached the wheelchair and, with the naturalness only children have, reached out her hand. "Come," she said simply. "We'll show you everything." And Claire let herself be guided into the magical world that three little girls had created in her living room. A world where silent castles could be healed with laughter, where broken families could be made whole again, where no one had to be alone. They spent the rest of the afternoon there, four figures sitting inside the sheet fort. The girls showed Claire every detail of their creations, explained the rules of their games, told the stories they had invented. And Claire just listened, nodded, watched, but she was there. When it was time for dinner, the girls carefully dismantled their forty, folded the sheets, arranged the cushions. They had learned to take care of things, not leave a mess. "Are you going to stay for dinner with us?" Sky asked hopefully. Claire looked at the three girls, at the living room that had come to life with their presence, at the house that had sound again. "I'll try," she said, her first words to them. And when she spoke, the three girls smiled as if they had just received the greatest treasure in the world. The house was no longer silent, and for the first time since the accident, Claire didn't want it to be. Ian parked the car in the garage and turned off the engine, exhausted after a long day at the restaurant. It had been an intense week since the girls arrived, and he was still trying to balance work with the new reality at home. He grabbed his briefcase and keys, mentally preparing for another night where Claire would stay in the bedroom while he cared for the girls. In recent days, she had come down to the living room a few times, but always timidly, almost cautiously. It was progress, no doubt, but Ian didn't dare to hope for much more. He knew his wife too well to believe deep changes could happen quickly. When he opened the side door that led straight into the kitchen, Ian expected to find the girls sitting at the table, maybe drawing or playing quietly while waiting for dinner. What he didn't expect was to hear laughter coming from the living room. Loud, genuine laughter, mixed with voices chatting excitedly. Ian froze in the kitchen, frowning. There were 4 voices. 3 he recognized immediately, Amelie, Nora, and Skye. But the 4th, it couldn't be. Ian walked slowly toward the living room, his heart beginning to race. With each step, the voices grew clearer, and the impossibility of what his ears heard made him almost dizzy. And then the brave knight discovered that the dragon actually just wanted someone to talk to, was Claire's voice, animated in a way Ian hadn't heard in over a year. "Talk about what?" asked Skye, her voice full of curiosity. "About how hard it is to be a dragon when everyone is afraid of you," Claire answered, and Ian could hear the smile in her voice. He just wanted friends, but every time he tried to approach people, they ran away. "Poor thing," Nora murmured. "He must have been so lonely." "He really was," Claire agreed. Until one day, Ian stood at the entrance to the living room and stopped completely, as if struck by lightning. There, in the center of an elaborate sheet fort made from every bedsheet in the house, sat Claire. His wife, who for over a year had barely left the bed, was seated on the floor in her wheelchair, surrounded by the 3 girls. But it wasn't just her physical presence that shocked Ian. It was everything else. Claire was smiling, a genuine, spontaneous smile that lit up her entire face in a way Ian had forgotten was possible. Her eyes shone with life, with genuine interest in what was happening around her. She gestured as she told the story, her hands moving expressively, creating different voices for each character. "What happened then?" asked Amelie, completely absorbed in the narrative. "Then 3 very special princesses appeared," Claire continued, looking at each of the girls. "Princesses who had a very rare gift." "What gift?" the 3 wanted to know in unison. "The gift of seeing people's hearts," Claire responded softly. "They looked at the dragon and didn't see a monster. They saw someone who needed love." Ian felt tears well up in his eyes. It wasn't just the words Claire was saying, it was the way she said them. With warmth, with purpose, with a life that seemed to have sprung out of nowhere. "And did they become friends with him?" Skye asked, her voice full of hope. "They did," Claire confirmed. "And do you know what happened when the dragon finally had friends?" "What?" "He discovered he wasn't really a dragon," Claire said, her voice lowering to a dramatic whisper. "He was under a spell, actually. He was a king who had lost his kingdom and his family. And the only thing that could break the spell was finding people who loved him for who he really was." The girls let out exclamations of surprise and delight. "So the princesses saved the king," Nora celebrated, "and he could be himself again," Skye added. "And now they all live happily in the castle," Amelie finished. "Exactly," Claire laughed, a clear, musical laugh that made Ian's heart race even more. Ian remained frozen in the entrance to the living room, unable to move, unable to fully process what he was witnessing. This was his Claire, the woman he had fallen in love with, the person who had always dreamed of being a mother, who had a natural gift for telling stories and making children laugh. She was there, alive and present, in a way he had thought he would never see again. "Ian!" Amelie was the first to notice him, waving excitedly. Claire was telling the most beautiful story in the world. "It was about a dragon who was actually a king," explained Nora, "and 3 princesses who saved him," added Skye. Ian looked at Claire, who had turned to face him. For a moment, he saw a shadow of uncertainty pass across her eyes, as if she didn't know how he would react to finding her there, fully participating in life for the first time in so long. "Hi," she said simply, but her voice carried a weight of meaning far beyond a simple greeting. Ian tried to respond, but the words wouldn't come. The tears he'd been holding back finally spilled freely down his face. He couldn't stop looking at her, at the miracle happening before his eyes. "Daddy, Ian is crying," observed Skye, concerned. "Are you sad?" Ian shook his head, trying to find his voice. "No," he finally managed to say. "I'm not sad. I'm so happy." "Why?" Nora asked, with the typical curiosity of a child. Ian looked at Claire again, who was watching him with an expression that mixed nervousness with something that looked like hope. "Because," he said, His voice choked with emotion. "It's been so long since I've seen Claire telling stories. It's been so long since she played and laughed like this." "She tells stories very well," commented Amelie. "Better than anyone we've ever met." "It's true," Ian agreed, stepping closer. "She always was very good at it." Claire blushed slightly, but did not look away. "I was just trying to remember how to do it," she said softly. "And you remembered perfectly," Ian replied, kneeling beside the makeshift fort. The girls, with the sensitivity only children possess, seemed to understand they were witnessing something important. They fell silent for a moment, watching the couple look at each other as if seeing one another for the first time in a long time. "Claire," Skye finally said, her small voice but determined, "can you tell more stories tomorrow?" "And teach us how to make funny voices like you do," Nora added. "And play with us again," Amelie completed. Claire looked at the three expectant faces, then at Ian, who watched her with a mix of love, gratitude, and amazement. "I would really love that," she replied, and for the first time her voice sounded truly firm. Ian couldn't hold back any longer. He reached out to Claire's wheelchair and took her hands in his. "Claire is alive again," he whispered, more to himself than to anyone else. But everyone heard. And the three girls, not fully understanding the weight of those words but feeling their importance, moved closer and wrapped both Claire and Ian in a collective hug. "Now we are a real family," said Skye, with the simple wisdom only children possess. "A family where everyone tells stories," added Nora, "and where no one is ever sad alone," Amelie completed. Ian looked at Claire and saw tears streaming down her face too, but they were different tears than those he had seen in the past year. They were tears of gratitude, of relief, of a joy that seemed to have sprung from the depths of her soul. "A family," Claire repeated, trying out the words. "Yes, I think that's what we are now." And at that moment, in the living room transformed into a magical castle by three special girls, Ian knew he had witnessed a true miracle. Not only the return of his wife to life, but the birth of something new and extraordinary. A family that had found each other within the wreckage of their individual losses. Claire was alive again, and this time, she was not alone. The days that followed brought a complete transformation in the Mercer household dynamics. What was once silence and mechanical routine turned into something vibrant, organic, full of daily discoveries. Claire had found her place among the girls, and they had embraced her presence with the naturalness only children have. Every morning after breakfast, the four would gather in the living room for what Amelie had dubbed adventure time. Claire would arrive in her wheelchair, and the girls would immediately start planning the day. "Today we can be explorers," suggested Skye, her eyes shining with excitement. "Or princesses who tend a magical garden," proposed Nora. "Or inventors who create fantastic machines," added Amelie. Claire listened to all the suggestions with genuine interest, contributing ideas that made the girls laugh and clap their hands. "What if we are magical bakers who make potions that cure any sadness?" she proposed one morning. The three girls looked at each other enthusiastically. "Can we bake for real?" Skye asked, cautious but hopeful. "Of course we can," Claire answered, surprised by her own confidence. "Let's go to the kitchen and make simple cookies, my grandmother's recipe." It was the first time Claire had entered the kitchen since the accident. Ian had adapted everything so she could use the wheelchair comfortably, but she had never tried. Now, with three little eager assistants at her side, everything seemed possible. "First, let's wash our hands well," Claire instructed, moving around the kitchen with movements that were slowly returning to normal. "Like a cleaning potion," exclaimed Amelie, making the others laugh. Claire taught them to measure ingredients, explaining each step with infinite patience. The girls took turns adding flour, sugar, eggs, each wanting to contribute to the creation. "My mother used to cook with us too," Nora whispered as she stirred the dough. "She said food made with love always tastes better." "Your mother was right," Claire responded softly, touching the girl's shoulder. "And I'm sure she would be proud to see how you're helping here." The cookies came out of the oven, golden and fragrant, filling the house with a smell that hadn't been there in ages. The four sat at the kitchen table, tasting their creation and planning their next culinary adventure. "Tomorrow can we make bread?" Skye asked. And then apple pie, Nora suggested. And a giant cake, Amelie completed. Claire laughed, realizing she had found a new way to connect with the girls. One thing at a time, she said, but I promise we will bake together whenever you want. The girls' play in the living room also evolved. Claire not only participated in their invented stories, she helped develop them, adding details that made the imaginary worlds even richer. What if Princess Sky had a secret garden where flowers changed color? Claire suggested during one of their story creation sessions. What colors? Sky asked, fascinated. It depends on the person's mood, Claire explained. If you're happy, they turn yellow like the sun. If you're sad, they turn blue like a winter sky. If you're angry, they turn red like fire. What if the person doesn't know how they feel? Nora asked, always the most pensive. Then they turn purple, Claire replied without hesitation, because purple is the color of confusion, but also of magic. And sometimes being confused is the first step to discovering something new about yourself. The girls absorbed every word, incorporating these ideas into their later play. One afternoon, while Claire told a particularly elaborate story about 3 sisters who had the power to heal sick forests, Sky got up and went to fetch something from the backpack, where she still kept her few belongings. "Claire," she said, returning with a handful of colorful stickers, "can we decorate your chair?" Claire looked at the stickers, bright stars, colorful flowers, little hearts, and felt something tighten in her chest. "You want to do that?" "We do," Amelie exclaimed. "So it will look more magical." "Like a queen's throne," Nora added. Claire nodded, too moved to speak. The 3 girls tackled the task with absolute seriousness, placing each sticker carefully, discussing where each one would look best. They brought flowers from the garden and attached them to the wheel rims, creating little bouquets that swayed gently when Claire moved. "Done," announced Sky when they finished. "Now you have the most beautiful chair in the world." Claire looked at her transformed wheelchair and felt tears run down her face. For over a year, she had seen that chair as a symbol of everything she had lost. Now, decorated with love by small hands, it seemed to represent something completely different. "Thank you," she murmured. "It's the most beautiful thing I've ever seen." Ian had noticed all these changes, of course. He came home and found traces of the day's adventures, flour on the kitchen counter, drawings scattered across the living room table, Claire and the girls chatting excitedly about some project for the next day. One night, after the girls were asleep, he and Claire sat in the living room looking at the remains of the day's fort. "Are you sure you're okay?" Ian asked, still cautious. "You're not pushing yourself too much?" Claire thought about the question before answering. "At first I thought I was D," she admitted. "I thought I was just trying to be polite, doing what was expected. But now, Ian, I wake up looking forward to seeing them. I find myself thinking of stories to tell, things to teach. They make me want to be the person I was before." "And is that good?" "It's more than good," Claire smiled. "It's like I'm learning to live again." Ian made a decision that night. The next morning, he called his managers and completely reorganized his work schedule. "I'm going to work from home for the next few months," he explained to Claire at breakfast. "I want to be here to see all of this happening." "Are you sure?" Claire asked. The restaurants will be fine," Ian interrupted. "I don't want to miss a single moment of this new phase of our lives." The girls were ecstatic when they learned Ian would be more present. "Now you can play with us in the morning too," Amelie cheered. "And help bake cookies," added Sky. "And hear Claire's stories from the start," Nora completed. Ian joined the morning adventures, discovering he had forgotten what it was like to simply play. He built more elaborate forts, helped create voices for story characters, and joined in the baking sessions, always ending up with flour in his hair. "You're not very good at cutting carrots," Nora observed one afternoon as they made soup. "It's been a long time since I cooked," Ian protested, laughing. "Claire was rusty at first too," Sky said, "but now she chops everything just right." "Practice," Claire explained, smiling at Ian. "It's just a matter of practice." The weeks passed in a succession of discoveries. Claire taught the girls to knit basic stitches, and they made uneven but love-filled scarves for everyone. Ian took the four of them to see a movie at the cinema, and they returned home, reenacting their favorite scenes in the living room. They planted a small garden in the side yard, where each girl chose her own flowers to care for. "These are Sky's flowers." She proudly showed off her purple petunias to any visitor. "And these are Nora's." Nora pointed to her small but determined sunflowers. "And these are Amelie's." Amelie indicated her white daisies that seemed to dance in the wind. Claire had her own section, where she planted aromatic herbs they used in the kitchen. "These are Mother Claire's plants," Sky said one day without thinking, then blushed violently. Claire felt her heart stop for a moment. "Mother Claire," she said softly. "Sorry," Sky murmured. "I didn't mean to." "We can't call you that if you don't want to." "No," Claire said quickly, crouching to Sky's level. "You can. If you want, you can call me that." The three girls looked at each other and then smiled as if they had just received the greatest gift in the world. "Mother Claire," Nora tested. "Mother Claire," Amelie repeated. "Mother Claire," Sky said a second time, now confidently. Ian, who was watering the nearby plants, stopped what he was doing and looked at the scene. His wife, surrounded by three girls calling her mother, all smiling as if they had discovered something magical. That night, after dinner, the girls sat in the living room drawing while Claire and Ian cleaned the kitchen. Nora had dedicated herself to a particularly elaborate drawing, using every colored pencil they had. "Done," she announced after over an hour of focused work. They all gathered around the table to see her creation. It was a simple drawing, made with childlike lines, but it conveyed something deeply moving. 5 stick figures holding hands in a horizontal line. One was in a wheelchair, clearly representing Claire. Next to her was a tall man who could only be Ian. And then 3 identical little girls. Above them, Nora had drawn a blue sky with white clouds, 3 red hearts floating in the air, and a large golden star shining over the whole family. "This is our real portrait," Nora said proudly, pointing to each figure. "That's Mother Claire, that's Daddy Ian, that's me, that's Sky, and that's Amelie." "And what do the hearts and the star mean?" Ian asked, his voice slightly husky. "The 3 hearts are because now we have 3 happy hearts again," Sky explained. "Amelie's, mine, and Nora's. And the star is Mother," Amelie added softly. "Our real mother, who is in heaven but sent us to you." Claire looked at the drawing and felt something unravel in her chest. There was her new family, depicted with the brutal honesty and simple beauty that only a child can capture. "Can I keep this drawing?" she asked, her voice trembling. "Of course," Nora said immediately. "I made it for you." Claire held the paper with trembling hands, as if holding something sacred. "I will treasure it," she promised. Later, when the girls were asleep, Claire sat in the living room looking at the drawing by the lamp's glow. Ian approached and sat beside her. "It's beautiful," he said. Claire nodded, silent tears running down her face. But they were different tears. Tears of gratitude, of love, of recognition. "Ian," she whispered, "we are a real family, aren't we?" "We are," he confirmed, putting his arm around her. "A real, true, complete family." Claire looked once more at the drawing, at those 5 stick figures holding hands under a sky full of love. "I never imagined it would be like this," she murmured. "I never imagined love could come in a way so different from what I had planned." "The best things in life often come that way," Ian replied. "Unexpected but perfect." Claire carefully folded the drawing and placed it in a special drawer of the living room table, along with other treasures she had collected in recent weeks: the first cookie they made together, a dried flower Sky had given her, a note Amelie had written saying thank you for being our mother. It was a new collection of precious memories, memories of a life she had never imagined, but that now she couldn't imagine living any other way. When they went to bed that night, Claire looked out the bedroom window at the garden they had planted together, illuminated by the soft moonlight. Tomorrow would be another day of discoveries, another day of love, another day of a family that had found its own unique and perfect way to exist. And for the first time in over a year, Claire fell asleep, smiling. The doorbell rang on a Tuesday morning, cutting through the house's joyful atmosphere like a cold blade. Claire was in the kitchen helping the girls make sandwiches for lunch, all laughing at a joke Amelie had told about how to make the perfect sandwich when the sound echoed through the halls. "Who could that be?" asked Skye, pausing mid-spread of jelly on her bread and looking toward the door. "We're not expecting anyone," Ian said, drying his hands on a towel and frowning. He went to the front door, followed curiously by the girls who had left their sandwiches half-finished. Claire stayed in the kitchen, but a strange, uncomfortable feeling settled in her stomach. There was something about the tone of that doorbell that didn't feel friendly. When Ian opened the door, he found a middle-aged woman wearing formal, serious clothes, carrying a brown leather briefcase and wearing an expression that definitely did not promise good news. "Mr. Mercer?" she asked, consulting some papers on her clipboard. "My name is Sandra Torres. I'm a social worker from the Department of Child Protection. May I come in?" Ian felt his blood run cold. Behind him, the girls instinctively hid, their survival instincts immediately sensing that something was wrong. Amelie pulled Nora and Skye closer together, their big eyes fixed on the unfamiliar woman. "Of course," he managed to say, his voice coming out rougher than he intended. Sandra entered the living room and went straight to the point with the efficiency of someone who had done this many times before. "We received an anonymous report that there are 3 minors living in this residence without proper documentation or legal custody," she explained, opening her briefcase and organizing her papers. "I need to verify the situation to ensure the children's welfare." Claire appeared in the kitchen doorway, still in her wheelchair, her face visibly pale. "What kind of report?" she asked, her voice tense. Sandra looked at Claire, then at the girls still hiding behind Ian, their expressions a mixture of fear and confusion. "Someone reported that 3 children were found abandoned and are being kept here without proper legal procedures," she explained, consulting her notes. "To ensure the minors' well-being, I need to fully understand the current situation." "They are very well cared for," Ian said quickly, a defensive tone creeping into his voice. "They have food, clean clothes, a safe home, education." "I don't doubt that, Mr. Mercer," Sandra interrupted kindly. "It's obvious the children are physically well, but the fact is legally these children need to be under state custody until a permanent documented solution is found." Amelie took a courageous step forward, even though fear was clearly written on her small face. "We don't want to leave here," she said in a small but firm voice. "This is our home now. These are the people who take care of us." Sandra looked at the girl with an expression that mixed professionalism and kindness. "I understand, dear, but there are rules and procedures we must follow to ensure you are truly safe." "We are safe here," Nora said, stepping out from behind Ian with determination. "Safer than we've ever been in our lives." "And how long exactly have you been living here?" Sandra asked, making detailed notes. "A few weeks," Skye replied hesitantly, her voice almost a whisper. Sandra sighed deeply and looked at Ian and Claire with an expression mixing understanding and professional duty. "Mr. and Mrs. Mercer, I'm sorry to inform you that, as of today, the girls will need to be temporarily removed and placed in a licensed foster home while we determine the best course of action for their future." The silence that followed was absolutely deafening. Ian felt as if the ground had vanished beneath his feet. The girls clung to each other tightly, their eyes quickly filling with tears of panic. "No," said Amelie, her voice growing louder in desperation. "We're not going. You can't make us leave again." "We did nothing wrong," Nora added, tears streaming down her face. "Why do we have to go?" "Please, ma'am," Skye pleaded, her voice breaking. "We promise we'll be very good. We won't cause trouble for anyone." Claire watched the scene unfold before her, something powerful growing inside her chest like an emotional storm. She saw the absolute fear in the girls' eyes, the desperation in their small voices, the way they clung to each other like they were all they had in the world. And then she realized, with crystal clarity that hit her like a bolt of lightning, that they were everything she had too. "No," Claire said, her voice cutting through the emotional chaos like a sharp blade. Everyone in the room turned to look at her, surprised by the firmness in her voice. "How, ma'am?" Sandra asked, clearly not expecting resistance. Claire maneuvered her wheelchair determinedly to the center of the living room, positioning herself strategically between Sandra and the girls as a protective barrier. "I said no," They are not going anywhere. Ms. Mercer, Sandra began, adopting the patient tone she clearly used with uncooperative families. I understand perfectly that you have grown attached to the girls, but the law is very clear on these situations. You understand nothing, Claire cut in with a vehemence that surprised even her eyes shining fiercely. You have no idea what these girls mean to us, and what we mean to them. Claire took a deep breath, gathering all her emotional strength, and looked Sandra directly in the eyes. I lost the will to live after the accident, she began, her voice trembling with raw emotion, but determined to be heard. And after losing our baby, I fell into depression not only because of what happened to me, but because I knew I would never be a mother. Tears began streaming down her face, but she continued with renewed strength. I had always dreamed of being a mother. It was literally all I ever wanted in life. It was my deepest dream, my greatest hope. And when I lost my baby, I thought I had lost any chance of fulfilling that dream, that my life had lost all meaning. Sandra paused her note-taking completely and looked at Claire with rapt attention. These girls, Claire continued, gazing at Amelie, Nora, and Sky with deep love, brought me back to life when I was convinced there was nothing left to live for. They reminded me of who I was before everything fell apart around me. They gave me a reason to get out of bed in the morning, to smile again, to have hope for the future. Her voice grew stronger, more determined, filled with absolute conviction. These girls, they are our daughters now, and we are going to adopt them officially. They are not going to a shelter. They are not going to be separated from us. They are not going back to a system that has failed them so many times. The silence in the room was palpable and charged with emotion. Sandra looked from Claire to Ian, then to the girls who watched with wide eyes of awe and hope. Miss Mercer, Sandra said carefully, choosing her words. The adoption process is long and extremely complex. There are extensive background checks, detailed psychological evaluations, multiple home visits. Then we'll start today, Ian said determinedly, stepping forward and standing firmly by Claire's side. The decision is made. We will regularize everything necessary. He looked directly at Sandra with determination that brooked no argument. We want to begin the adoption process immediately. We will do absolutely anything required, all the paperwork, every evaluation, every check you need, but they will not leave this home. This is their family now. Daddy Ian, Sky whispered, approaching him with eyes shining with hope. Do you really want to be our parents forever? Ian knelt to be exactly at their level. We do, he said with absolute firmness. More than anything in the whole world. And does that mean we never have to go away again? Nora asked, her voice filled with a cautious but growing hope. Never again, Claire answered with total conviction, extending her arms. You are our daughters. This is your home forever and ever. The three girls ran to Claire, hugging her with desperate strength. She held them close with all the love in her heart, feeling something deep and fundamental complete in her soul. Sandra watched the scene for a long moment, making silent, thoughtful notes. Finally, she closed her briefcase with a sigh. I will be completely honest with you, she said, her voice now gentler. In over 15 years doing this job, it's rare to see such a genuine, strong bond formed in such a short time, and it's absolutely clear that the girls are not only well cared for, but genuinely happy and loved here. She paused, looking at the family embracing with something that seemed like admiration. I will report to my supervisor today. We can try to expedite the adoption process, especially considering the girls have no other known or available relatives, but you will have to go through all the required evaluations and checks thoroughly. We will do anything, Claire said immediately, her voice firm. Absolutely anything necessary. And while that happens, can the girls stay here? Ian asked, hope clear in his voice. Sandra looked again at the girls clinging to Claire with love, Ian standing beside them like a dedicated protector, at the obvious happiness and security radiating from the whole family. I will make a formal recommendation that they remain here throughout the process, she finally said, but there will be regular follow-up visits and monitoring. That's fine, Ian agreed immediately. Whenever you need us, we'll be ready. Sandra carefully put away her papers and stood to leave. "I will contact you later this week to start all the official paperwork. And Mr. and Mrs. Mercer." They looked at her attentively. "It's truly rare to see a family form so organically and authentically like this. I sincerely hope you understand the extraordinary blessing you have." "We understand," Claire replied, holding the girls even tighter. "We fully understand the blessing we have received." After Sandra left, the family remained hugging in the living room for a long time, processing everything that had happened. Finally, Amelie pulled back a bit and looked at Claire and Ian with touching seriousness. "Do you really want to be our parents?" she asked, as if she still couldn't fully believe it was true. "We already are your parents," Claire replied tenderly. "Now we just need to make it official with the government papers." "Forever and ever?" Sky asked, needing confirmation. "Forever and ever," Ian confirmed solemnly, and as they remained huddled in that room filled with love, everyone knew they had just faced the first real decisive test of their new family together. And they had succeeded with love. The months that followed Sandra Torres's visit were an intense roller coaster of endless paperwork, detailed interviews, rigorous home visits, and extensive psychological evaluations. Ian and Claire dedicated themselves to the adoption process with such steely determination that they even surprised the most experienced professionals in the system. Sandra Torres had become an ally on the family's journey. Her bi-weekly visits turned into almost familial gatherings, where she watched with growing admiration as the girls thrived under the Mercer's care. "In 20 years of my career, I've never seen a couple so prepared," she commented during one visit, watching how naturally the girls interacted with Ian and Claire. "It's rare to see children adapt so well." The girls underwent evaluations with child psychologists specializing in trauma. Dr. Sarah Chen was impressed by the transformations she witnessed in each session. Amelie had stopped having nightmares about abandonment. The night terrors of the first weeks had given way to dreams of adventures with her new family. Nora was reading fluently and showing an intellectual curiosity that had been stifled during months on the streets. Sky was more talkative and confident, her genuine smiles lighting up any room. "It's remarkable," Dr. Chen wrote in her report. "These children found a family that allowed them to be children again. Their psychological progress is exemplary." Claire underwent her own intensive evaluations. Dr. Martinez, assigned to assess her maternal capacity considering her disability and history of depression, initially showed skepticism. "Ms. Mercer," he said in their first session, "you have experienced significant trauma that resulted in severe depression. You have been reclusive for over a year. How can I be sure you're prepared to care for 3 traumatized children?" Claire looked him straight in the eye. "Doctor, I can't promise I won't have bad days," she replied honestly, "but I can promise that these girls gave me a reason to fight through those days. They gave me purpose when I had lost all hope." She paused, choosing her words. "Before them, I was just existing. Now I wake up every day with a clear purpose, to be the mother they need." It took 6 sessions, practical demonstrations of care, and reports from other professionals before he recommended her approval. Ian also underwent evaluations. As a successful restaurant owner, his financial stability was never questioned, but they wanted to know if he could balance work and fatherhood. "Mr. Mercer," the evaluator asked, "your schedule has always been intense. How do you plan to adjust it for 3 children?" "I already have," Ian responded. "I hired additional managers, restructured my schedule. My family is my #1 priority now." And he kept that promise. In the months of the process, he rarely stayed at the office past 4 in the afternoon. He had learned to delegate and find joy in a less frantic schedule. After 4 intense months, the day of the final hearing arrived. Ian closed all his restaurants that morning, sending a clear message to his team that nothing was more important. The girls wore their best dresses, new ones bought especially for the occasion. They spent the morning getting ready together, styling each other's hair, a touching demonstration of how they had become true sisters. "What if the judge doesn't like us?" Sky asked anxiously as Claire tied a ribbon in her hair. "Impossible," Claire replied confidently, looking at the reflection of the 4 of them in the mirror. How could anyone not fall in love with you? What if he thinks there are too many children? Nora added, always analytical. Then he doesn't understand what family means, Ian said from the doorway, adjusting his formal tie. And if he doesn't understand, we will explain. Amelie approached with surprising seriousness. What if it goes wrong? What if we have to leave? Claire knelt to Amelie's height, holding her face. That won't happen. We are a family. And families don't separate. In the imposing courthouse, they sat united in the front row. The girls sat between Ian and Claire, holding hands. Behind them, Sandra Torres, Dr. Chen, and Dr. Martinez came voluntarily to testify on behalf of the family. The environment was formal and intimidating, with tall, dark, wood-paneled walls. The girls looked around nervously, having never been in such a solemn place. Judge Harrison was a distinguished gray-haired man who had presided over hundreds of adoption cases. When he entered, everyone rose respectfully. He settled in, adjusted his glasses, and paged through the voluminous Mercer file. "This is an interesting case," he began, his voice echoing in the chamber. 3 orphan children, a couple who never considered adoption under such unconventional circumstances. Ian felt Claire tense and squeezed her hand in support. "Mr. and Mrs. Mercer," the judge continued, organizing his papers, "I've read all the extensive reports, psychological evaluations, home visits, professional testimonies, all unanimously positive, which is rare." He paused, studying the couple. "But there is one fundamental question I always ask. Why do you want to adopt these 3 particular girls?" Ian was prepared with arguments about financial stability, safe home, commitment to education. He had practiced a formal presentation for weeks, but Claire rose in her chair before he could speak. "May I answer, Your Honor?" she asked respectfully, but with surprising firmness. The judge nodded. The room fell silent. Claire looked at the girls, observing their anxious faces, their small hands holding each other. Then she turned her gaze to the judge, and when she spoke, her voice carried absolute truth. "These children healed me," she said simply. "I love them, and I am ready to be a mother, in the way I can, in the way they need." The honesty of her words echoed through the chamber like a sacred declaration. No elaborate arguments, no complex pleadings, just naked truth from a woman who found purpose in 3 children in need of a home. Judge Harrison studied Claire for a long moment, observing the sincerity in her eyes. There was something about that simplicity that carried more weight than any elaborate argument. "Mrs. Mercer," he finally said, "that was one of the most honest answers I have ever heard here." He turned to the girls with paternal kindness. "Amelie, Nora, Sky, do you want the Mercers to officially be your parents?" "Yes, sir," they answered in unison, their small voices strong but resolute. "Why, use your own words." Amelie rose with surprising dignity. "Because they love us for real," she said, her voice growing in confidence. "Not because they're obliged. They love us as we are, even when we mess up. And they take care of us in a way that makes us feel safe," Nora added. "We are not afraid to make noise or ask for something." Sky spoke last, and her voice small but firm. "They turned our house into a real home, and they made us a family." The judge took notes, moved by their words. "Ms. Torres, your final recommendation." Sandra stood, emotion coloring her professional tone. "Your Honor, in 20 years of this work, I can count on one hand the cases where I have seen a family form so organically. The children have flourished under the Mercers' care, and the Mercers found purpose and transformation in parenthood." She paused, looking at the family. "This is not just a successful adoption, it's a family healing each other. I recommend approval without reservation." Dr. Chen testified next. "From a psychological standpoint, their progress has been extraordinary. They went from trauma and insecurity to remarkable emotional stability. The bond is deeply healthy." Dr. Martinez was last. "Initially, I had concerns about Mrs. Mercer's capacity after severe depression, but I have witnessed a woman who found in motherhood not just a role, but healing. She is extraordinary at it." The judge made his final notes, then leaned back, observing the family for what felt like an eternity. "There are rare moments in this profession," he said, removing his glasses. When we witness something that restores faith in the human capacity for mutual healing through love. This is clearly one of those moments. He looked directly at the family. You have found something extraordinary, a family formed not by accident, but by conscious choice, true love, and mutual commitment to care for one another. He brought down the official gavel. Therefore, with genuine joy, I officially approve the adoption of Amelie, Nora, and Sky by Mr. and Mrs. Ian and Claire Mercer. As of now, they are entirely your daughters, with all rights and protections. The sound of the gavel echoed like a proclamation of victory. The girls screamed with happiness and threw themselves into Claire and Ian's arms. Tears of joy streamed down everyone's faces. Even the austere Judge Harrison smiled openly. The clerk brought the official documents. Claire held them with trembling hands, looking at the names in permanent ink. Amelie Mercer, Nora Mercer, Sky Mercer. Now we are really a family, Sky said excitedly, hugging Claire. You always were, Claire replied, kissing her head. Now it's official. Outside the courthouse, under the afternoon sun, they embraced as a complete family. Ian cried without caring who saw. Claire held the documents like treasures, and the girls proudly repeated their new names. Amelie Mercer, she said, testing how it sounded. Nora Mercer, she repeated, smiling. Sky Mercer, she added, spinning around. And now? Amelie asked. Now we celebrate, Ian said. At the restaurant. A party for the official Mercer family. They headed to Ian's main restaurant downtown. The staff had prepared a special table with flowers and a banner reading, Welcome to the Mercer family. Miguel, the chef, prepared a special menu with the girls' favorite dishes. Sarah, the manager, ordered a custom cake with 5 figures. When they arrived, the entire staff waited to greet them. There were tears of joy, warm hugs, and a palpable sense of celebration. This is a day we will remember forever, Claire said, looking around the table where their family was gathered. The day we officially became Mercers, Ian agreed. The day we finally had a permanent family, Amelie added. The day we stopped being afraid, Nora said. The day we knew we would never be alone again, Sky completed. As they ate and celebrated, Claire looked at every face around the table. A year ago, she was locked in a room, convinced life was over. Now she was surrounded by love and purpose. A toast, Ian said, raising his glass of juice. To what? Claire asked. To the family we found when we stopped looking for perfection and started looking for love, he replied. To the Mercer family, Amelie said solemnly. To the Mercer family, everyone echoed, and as the glasses clinked on the table, each knew they were celebrating much more than legal documents. They were celebrating the miracle of 5 lost souls who found one another and decided that together they were stronger, happier, more complete. Outside, life in the city went on normally. But within those walls, a new family was writing the first official chapter of their story together. A story that began with abandonment and pain, but now promised to be filled with love, laughter, and the certainty that family isn't about blood, it's about choice, care, and commitment to be there for each other. The Mercer family was complete, officially and, more importantly, in the heart. 6 months had passed since the adoption was finalized. The Mercer house had found its own rhythm, a gentle melody made of family routines and moments of comfortable silence. It was a Sunday afternoon in autumn, when the golden leaves danced in the garden and the air carried the sweet nostalgia only that season can bring. Claire was on the back porch, sitting in her wheelchair with a makeshift book in her lap, blank pages she had sewn together to create her own stories. The girls were spread around her, Amelie lying in the garden swing, Nora sitting on the steps leaning against Claire's wheelchair, and Sky wrapped in a blanket on the floor. Tell us another story, Mother Claire, Sky murmured sleepily, her eyes already heavy with the warmth of the afternoon. Claire smiled, adjusting the reading glasses she had started wearing, not out of necessity, but because the girls thought she looked wiser with them. Which story do you want to hear today? A new one, Nora whispered. One you've never told before. One with a happy ending, Amelie added, her arm dangling from the swing. Claire thought for a moment, looking at the garden they had planted together. The flowers chosen by the girls still colored the beds, even as autumn approached. "Once upon a time," Claire began, her voice taking on the special tone reserved for stories, "there was a very sad woman who lived alone in a big, silent house." The girls made themselves comfortable, recognizing the start of something familiar. This woman had lost something very precious and believed she would never be happy again. She locked herself in the highest room of the house and decided the world was no longer for her. But sometimes the universe has plans we don't understand. And one rainy night, 3 stars fell from the sky. "Real stars?" Sky asked softly. "The most real ones there are, but they weren't ordinary stars. They were special stars that had lost their place in the sky and were looking for a new home on Earth." Ian appeared on the porch, having been in the garden pruning roses. He stopped when he saw the scene, his family gathered in the peace of the afternoon. For a moment he just watched, etching that image into his memory. The 3 stars were different from each other, but they were sisters and never separated. The first was brave and protected the others. The second was wise and asked important questions. The third was full of love and always found ways to make others smile. The girls smiled, recognizing themselves in the description, even through the drowsiness overtaking them. "And what happened when they found the sad woman?" Amelie asked. "Ah," Claire said, pausing dramatically, "that was the most magical part." Ian sat next to Claire, holding her hand as they all listened together to the story that was, in many ways, their own. If this story touched your heart, subscribe to the channel and turn on notifications so you don't miss the next ones. Leave a like, because it helps this story get recommended to more people. See you in the next story.